Hi everyone, and welcome to another video from Dr. Lehman. This one will work for both a European World Civ or an American history class. And I just want to give you about 2 or 3 minutes on nationalism because nationalism is at the intersection of lessons on the subject in European history, the coming together of countries like Italy and Germany, the rise of more democratic institutions in other parts of Europe, or in the case of the United States, America's entry as a world power following the Spanish-American War, and some of the politics of the United States in the early to mid 20th century. So, nationalism is a massive topic, and I could spend a semester teaching simply on that subject. But to boil it down, nationalism is a phenomenon that arises especially in the 1800s, but it has its origins in the French Revolution. It's based around the idea that people identify not only as subjects of a state or citizens in a community where they have certain rights, but as members of something that has real or imagined qualities, in which people share a common history, religion, culture, not necessarily religion, but aspects of culture, connection to a specific land space, or a combination of these factors. It can be a little bit amorphous, but in general it gives rise to the idea that there is a group that one is a part of through birth or through some sort of process of cultural assimilation. And it is what connects many people to the rising states of the 1800s. The concepts of citizenship in the American French revolutions were heavily based around active participation in, a democratic society. So like you vote, you own land, you have a stake in things. But nationalism is more about who you are in some sort of fundamental way. And those who advance the ideas of nationalism are trying to make, for the most part, certain claims about the idea that a certain space should be for the Germans or for the French, and to the quality of people living there, that these people, through either biological or cultural mechanisms, possess certain innate qualities of honesty, hard work, sobriety. They're always positive qualities, and they tend to be the same qualities in the minds of different nationalists. And, in fact, nationalism is a process, to quote the historian Benedict Anderson, who's kind of the authority on this, a process of creating imagined communities. Nationalism is a modern phenomenon. Most people didn't see themselves as having a real fundamental connection to the state, to a government, or even to people outside of their immediate environment, unless it was through direct family ties or through religion. Even language varied so much. If you left the small space that you lived in, that you grew up in, that was not a great unifier of people before widespread public education in the mid to late 1800s. So nationalism is modern. Those who are nationalists attempt to trace back the history of their nation to the case of the French, the Gauls before the Roman invasions. So we're talking like pre-CE, over 2,000 years. But in reality, most people in France didn't speak French as we know it today, or at least as they would recognize it amongst each other, until the late 1800s. Once again, it's intentional, it's educational activity. It's the workings of the modern nation state that make people more homogenous, make people have fewer differences in many ways. Unfortunately, it also leads them to see differences in others, and to begin to make claims, either based on their own intuition or based on politicians, that we are better than they, and that we can really easily or readily define who us and them are. And that once you justify yourself as a member of a nation, as a member of something that has a history and a purpose and this big footprint, that being superior people, their land should become our land. Not just can because we can take it, but should because it is right. And that's the kind of language that will lead to some of the biggest calamities of the 20th century. Whether you're in the United States, Europe, Asia, and nationalism can be used as a liberating function. You'll see this in anti-colonial movements. But it's one that's heavily associated with violence and leaves a lot of open questions afterwards. We'll look at people like Frantz Fanon and Albert Memmi in Africa or in the Caribbean in several of my classes in order to see the dangerous combination of liberating nationalism and the violence that's often needed to achieve independence and a free community. Those are hard questions, and we'll get to them later. Hopefully that's a little introduction to this concept. It's one that's going to play a major role in world history from about the mid-1800s up to the present day. And I'll see you in class. Thanks.